Hello, and welcome to the Truthwards podcast, where we discuss the details of natural solutions for chronic health conditions. I'm Natalie Kasana, and I'm so happy and grateful that you are listening. I hope you will enjoy it or get something useful out of this series. In this episode, you will hear about Meghan's experience dealing with severe migraines and how natural solutions have helped her to manage and reduce her symptoms over time. I'd like to start by noting that the views and opinions shared during this podcast are my own and do not reflect the views of my employer or any affiliated organizations. That equally applies to any guests that may appear on the podcast as well. Additionally, because we will be talking about health topics, I want to make clear that I am not a licensed healthcare professional, and any advice shared on this podcast is not meant to be a substitute for professional medical advice, nor a guarantee that the same results would be seen by anyone else. I would always encourage anyone to seek the opinion of a healthcare provider before trying any possible healing paths. It is important to establish a clinical diagnosis and assess possible risks or interference with current medications. Welcome to the Truthwords podcast, Meghan. Thank you so much for joining me today and for being willing to share the details of your story and how you've used natural solutions to try to help with your migraines. I really think it could be helpful to share this information for anyone else out there who might be going through migraines.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so intrigued to hear what actually worked for you in the end, as well as maybe what didn't work for you that you might have tried, and also how you've managed to successfully integrate conventional and alternative solutions to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, of course. So just to give some background and everything, I've had migraines with aura since around, I would say, like 12 years old, and no one else in my family had it. So at first they weren't quite sure what it was when I had my first episode. And then when we finally figured out what it was, I initially did try a lot of medicine that was prescribed. And then after a lot of doctors told me that there's a possibility that I might grow out of it. And then since that wasn't the case, that's when I started leaning more into natural medicine and just anything I would see online, anything I'd read in a book, my family members sending me tips and tricks. And I've had some relative success for it, but also as I grow older, my migraines haven't been as severe as they were when I was younger, when they first started. So
yeah, that's a really helpful background. And with all natural solutions and all chronic conditions, it's sometimes very hard to measure what was actually impactful. But either way, I think it gives people hope that even if you think you can't grow out of them, maybe you will, combined with maybe some natural solutions can help along the way.
yeah, exactly. So like I said, the doctors weren't exactly sure. Everyone's different with migraines. So there's migraines and then there's migraines with aura. So aura affects your vision. So for me, I get like when you look in the sun or when someone takes a photo of you with flash and you get that blue dot in your vision, I get that, but for roughly a half to 3/4 of my vision. So it was very difficult to function by myself, I would say. And along the way, a lot of my friends, like throughout school and everything, became very important to me, like a helping hand. Because I also, with my migraines, I have like very similar to stroke-like symptoms. So it was hard to diagnose in the beginning. But basically, I lose my speech, my ability to talk. My mind slows down. So even if I wanted to talk, it wouldn't even be possible. I also lose feeling on the left side of my body. So like hand, feet, all of that. Yeah. So when I first went in, they thought that I had a stroke. So they ran some tests because they were like, at your age, it should not be happening and all of that. And surprisingly enough, they were able to diagnose it within the same appointment, which is, I feel like, not as common with some other friends that I have that also have migraines with aura, because a lot of the times I feel like people disregard migraines, like, oh, obviously the headache as well. They're just like, oh, it's a headache, sleep it off and whatnot. But with me, I get my migraines in clusters. So if I get migraines, like when I used to get them really badly, I would have one, and then that would automatically mean I'd get them the next 2 following days. And there wasn't really much to do to prevent it other than, I guess, knowing it's coming on, so it won't be as surprising.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, like ice packs behind my head. I also tried peppermint oil. and any type of oil really on my temples, on my stomach. Those were the main, I feel like that didn't exactly help with the pain, but it did help sort of calm you down, I guess, because when you're in that much pain, it's sort of, I feel like you get stressed out.
Oh my gosh.
Um,
And if you don't mind, let's back up a little bit. So, how old were you when you first had a migraine, and how did that feel at that age? I can only imagine.
yeah, of course. I remember it very well. I was roughly around, I'd say 12, maybe 13. I was still in middle school for sure. I can't remember the specific date, but I was writing, it was Thanksgiving, it was some holiday, and I was writing a happy Thanksgiving or a card to my relatives because I was about to go to their house to celebrate. And I remember looking down at the card and I could no longer see what I was writing. So I assumed that it was like, oh, maybe the pen dried out, something of that. And then I looked down at my hand. And that's one of the main things I do to this day when I feel I'm getting a migraine. The best way to do is look down at your hand. And then if you see sort of that, it's like a blurry circle, then that's when I know. If everything starts going blurry, then I know that I'm getting a migraine. So that happened, and that had never happened to me before. So I went into my parents' room and I told them that I wasn't able to see, and obviously that freaked them out. So they took me to the ER, and then that's when they ran some tests and they concluded that it was migraines with aura, even though there's zero family history or whatnot. It's just, I guess it happens. I'm not quite sure really the reasoning for it. I didn't exactly get another migraine for a really long time after that, until maybe a year. So they thought it was maybe just a once in a lifetime scenario maybe for me. And then they realized that it was a chronic condition that I would probably have for the rest of my life, because that's, a lot of people do get flare-ups during puberty because a lot of the triggers could be hormonal changes, barometric pressure, light sensitivity. Sometimes I could look at the sun and I get a migraine, or look at a camera and get a migraine. So it's really easily triggered. And I think because of that, it's really hard to grow out of, because those are things that you deal with in your day to day.
Wow. And you said no one else in your family or that you know of, like from your history, has any type of migraine experience?
Yeah, that's correct.
Interesting. What did doctors say that they thought was the cause, or they really have no idea?
I guess they're just unlucky. Like at the end of the day, I guess it is, if my mom were to have it, it would make more sense. But it also just like I said, my friends have them and their parents don't have them. So maybe my great grandparents or someone had it down the line and it just so happened to go to me next. I can't exactly answer that. And it
Yeah.
wasn't something that really they thought was peculiar. They just assumed that this is how it was, because this is how it is in a lot of other cases.
Interesting. And then obviously that would have been very scary when you first experienced that. Was it also painful? Were you maybe concerned? Did you feel like a sense of panic, or how was that experience for you when you first had that?
Yeah, so my migraines have evolved since the very first time that I just spoke about. So in that instance, obviously my vision went. That's always the first thing to happen to me. And then it goes in an order, like then my hand will go numb. I always have a lingering headache, but it'll worsen, and it's right above my eyebrows and around my temples. And then it also moves like the back of my head. I get them sort of, it just feels like basically someone's squeezing a lemon and the lemon is your head, like trying to juice it. It just feels like your entire head is just being squeezed and compressed. So yeah, just a really tight feeling. And then luckily I hadn't lost my speech at that point, but later on, the following year, that's when my symptoms really, I guess, increased, and I got more, like, it wasn't just a headache, it became more than just aura and a headache. And then that's when like speech and all, and that was scary because my parents, I couldn't exactly vocalize what was going on. So once again, they took me, at that point they had known, but they did take me in just to make sure that everything was good. And then that's when I got like CT, MRIs, all of that, because I guess it was strange for my age group to have a migraine so early and so severe, and with all of the symptoms associated with a stroke. So there wasn't too much worry around it, but they just wanted to cross the T's, dot the I's.
Yeah, absolutely. I can only imagine my kid experiencing that. That is so
Yeah.
scary for you and for your parents. At least it was not anything worse than that, right? After all the tests.
Yeah, no, luckily, I never really assumed it would be. I mean, maybe that was just me being naive as a kid. And I would say, based on my parents' behavior, they didn't assume much. They were also, I would say, just confused about the entire situation because this was unfamiliar to them. They had never dealt with it with anyone. And I guess it was also very unpredictable. There was a full, I think it was 3 weeks I once got in a row I missed like 3 weeks of school back to back because, like I said, they came in clusters, but instead of 3 days, it was about a week cluster. And I just kept getting, like, it's like I said, like the lights, like if I'm outside or if I'm in a room with the new LED lights have been triggering migraines lately, and just anything to that degree. And then barometric pressure. So if it rains one day, sort of like how when someone injures their ankle or their ACL, something like that, they can sense it coming on. That's the same way I am with a headache. Or if I start feeling that my vision is going in and out, I know a storm's coming. So I guess I'm always prepared for that.
Wow.
But
so you seem
yeah.
so calm talking about it now. Were you always this calm about it, or did it stress you out or worry you when you were younger, especially if you knew you were going to get more in a row?
I would say I think I'm a relatively laid back person in general. I don't get too stressed about things, especially out of my control. I think I learned that young, probably due to this condition, but a lot of things that I just know that I won't be able to change, I try to do everything I can to help in advance, but really with my condition, there are very few things you can do. So I would say the first time it happened, I did freak out. But like I said, since I was young, I think I was naive. And like I said, I thought the pen had dried out. I didn't really think too much of it. I don't remember me going to the hospital and all of that too in detail, just writing on the page and then thinking, oh, what's going on?
Oh my
But I
gosh.
would say after all of that, I also have a vagus nerve condition that's connected to my migraines, but I'm not so sure if it's a chronic condition. But basically, they usually happen if I pass out, I get a migraine, and if I get a migraine, I could pass out. So they do work together, unfortunately, and I think that is mostly what I've been more scared of, because then if I fall and I don't catch myself, like I risk like hurting my head. But also for migraines, I think it was when I was younger, being in new environments and then running the risk of having a migraine and not being able to communicate it to people. So I made sure that I had a good group of people around me for the longest time, knowing my condition, and I would have almost a signal in case something were to go wrong, that I felt relatively safe. But there have been times in college where like I fainted in front of my entire school once. Like I was on everyone's radar for sort of making sure that I was all right. So if I ever seemed off, people would notice it immediately. Whereas in college, I feel like my friends weren't as aware of my condition. Like I told them, but they'd never seen it because it died down a little bit after puberty. But then when there were times I couldn't talk and stuff, it was more difficult to communicate. And if I'm out and about, or once I got one when I was driving to the gym, that was scary because then I had to pull over, and I have like a sumatriptan nasal spray now, where if you catch it within the first I think it's like the window's 5 to 10 minutes. If you catch it then, it'll help your migraine symptoms subside and it'll lessen the likelihood of it being a cluster migraine, but it's still like a time game. You can't really control too much other than that. So I was just waiting in the parking lot. Fortunately, I had made it to the gym, but it's just one of those things where you never know when it's going to come up.
Wow. And it sounds like when the symptoms hit, it happens really quickly, right? You don't have a lot of
Immediately.
time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I would say within obviously the aura is the first thing to come. So as soon as I see like my vision getting all messed up with, then I try to take my medicine as soon as that, even if I have a bad headache, because sometimes the headache comes first and then it's so agitating that it also, I guess, sparks my aura. But yeah, so if I don't do that, all the symptoms would hit within the first 10, 15 minutes easily, if not faster. So it really is a time game. As soon as I feel it, I need to. And I think it's just because I've dealt with it for so long that I'm not as stressed out. But the scariest part of all my symptoms is like obviously not seeing is scary, but I think above that is not being able to communicate, because my mind goes so incredibly slow that you can't even form a thought. And that part lasts couple hours, even with the medicine. If that happens, that's like my vision will come back, my feeling in my hand will come back. Sometimes my headache's relatively there for the full 24 hours, but the speech will take hours, and I try to rest and all of that, but I can't even use my phone sometimes because my brain is moving so slow. I can't text coherently. Like it's like I don't know, there's no thought process moving in my head. So it's just really scary that I can't even formulate any thoughts audibly or on text or communicate anything. So that's by far the scariest thing. But thankfully, that is the last symptom to happen. So if I catch it in time, typically it won't get that bad. But when I was younger and I didn't have any medication, that's when it was probably the most scary to go up to my teacher and then just sort of stand there and they would figure it out.
I can only imagine how difficult that is as a kid and how scary. And it's a condition you have to keep dealing with. I'm so glad to hear that it is improving, though.
Yeah.
So on that note, what were the first, let's say, conventional treatments that you tried? And, how have your medicines and treatments kind of changed over time?
Yeah, so I saw a seizure specialist at the time. It was one of my parents' friends' good friend, so they recommended to me, and I got in instantly, which was very unfamiliar. I feel like in the medical world, you always have to go on wait lists and like months to see a specialist, but they thought it was urgent enough to get me in. And she prescribed me a seizure well, it's used for seizures. However, the side effects, or it also, I guess, indirectly works for migraines as well. So it wasn't intended for migraine use, but they found through use of it with other patients that it did help in turn. So I was on that for a good 2 years, I want to say. And my migraines so this was like during peak puberty, my hormonal changes, 6th to 8th grade, where it just was unpredictable. I would have good days, I'd have bad days. But the issue is with the bad days, the migraines were so bad I wouldn't even be able to sleep. And one of my other triggers is lack of sleep or a lot of stress, which I was also getting from having so many, will also trigger a migraine. So it was sort of this never-ending vicious cycle that there wasn't really, like, I wasn't seeing a light. So then it got so severe that I was prescribed lorazepam, which is stuff they use for seizures just as much in the medical field, and that basically knocks you out for a couple hours because my pain was so severe that I couldn't sleep on my own. So that was also an option. And then as I grew up and I went into high school, I realized I didn't want to be dependent on this medicine. But what's also interesting about the migraine medicine is that if you stop taking it abruptly and you didn't have seizures before, it can actually increase your likelihood and give you seizures. So that was also scary to be on a medicine that was like, I would guess I would sometimes get anxious if I forgot a day or if I went on a trip and I forgot it, that I might actually develop seizures, another condition that I never had, just as a result of trying to help almost fix my current condition. So I weaned myself off of that because I didn't want that to become my reality. And the migraines did come back, but then I was able to handle them with Advil and other medicines such as that. And also, like I said, the best cure, in my opinion, is dark room, headphones, sleep mask, essential oils, honestly, all of that together, because you're also really sensitive to hearing just as much as light. Like, all of your senses basically are heightened in the worst way possible because it's very irritable. Anything will provoke a migraine or make it worse. So I would say my mom was also in support of finding other remedies such as that even to this day, she bought me a balm that you're supposed to put on your temples, and it's infused with a lot of different things. I can't remember the ingredient list, but a lot of different oils and just like at-home remedies that won't prevent a migraine and they won't fix it either, but it'll help with the pain and it'll just help soothe.
Wow. So basically what you kind of typically hear for migraines is go in a dark room. You said put some headphones on, sleep mask, and certain essential oils. Which one stands out, or which two stand out as the most soothing to you?
I would say lavender and peppermint. That works best for me. I think it's the most soothing, and I don't exactly know the science behind it, but doctors actually have told me that. They set the dark room, lying down as well, because I don't know anyone else with migraines that have the like from my friends that pass out, but you always want to lay down just in case that you run that risk. And peppermint, I don't, there's something about peppermint that's so strong that I feel like it almost not numbs it, but it distracts your body. Like the scent is so strong that it sort of distracts your body for a minute and it focuses on that instead.
That makes sense. And you rub it on your temples and that helps?
Yeah, I run it on my temples. If I have a sleeping mask, I put on the sleeping mask. Sometimes I also have a wet washcloth for my eyes, and I'll like have I'll put ice in it, and then I'll put essential oils on that as well. Really anywhere that's like by any of my senses. So ears or nose or eyes. Yeah.
That's terrific. And what other, let's say, factors did you discover in your life that helped to maybe mitigate or prevent you getting a migraine? I think you started to mention something about making sure you got enough sleep or stress. What are some other, I guess, triggers and things that have helped you along the way?
Yeah, for sure. So I think at a young age, I was forced to get my life together. Like, it's not that I lived an unorganized mess, but I never was the type of person that needed, like, I liked my sleep, but I didn't need 8 hours to function. I was okay with getting a good 6, 7. But I think also like diet, I realized that there are some changes in my diet could cause migraines, as well as exercise. So luckily, or I guess now I weightlift, but back in middle school and high school, I was a 3-season athlete, so I was always moving. And I didn't know it at the time, but that actually helped. Well, it's a give and take. So some weightlifting sometimes worsens my migraine because of the blood flow. So I actually got a migraine just last month while I was at the gym, and I had my medicine on me, so it was okay because it only lasted, I would say, an hour to 2 hours rather than the full 24 hours. So with that, all of the blood rushing from the workout, and I was doing an exercise where I was like back extensions, if you're familiar. So all of the blood flow is rushing to my head, and I couldn't do anything really that gets my heart moving and pumping, because then it's pumping blood faster to my head. So, but in turn, there have been times where I'm playing a sport, like in the middle of practice, once I got a migraine, and I pushed through it, and my migraine actually fixed itself by the end of practice, which had never happened. I didn't take any Advil. I didn't take any of that. So it was really interesting because there are some things, and I still don't know to this day, but once I was on a class field trip and we were doing some running exercise and I got the worst migraine. And then 3 hours later, after running around and doing just stuff you do as kids, like throwing balls, all of that, I was in pain, but it alleviated. So that was really interesting to find that connection between fitness and, I guess, migraines. I'm still not exactly sure, because some doctors that I've spoken to obviously encourage exercise, but if you feel a migraine coming on, for your safety, you shouldn't continue it, just in case, like, I guess heavy lifting could be dangerous if your limbs get numb and whatnot. But then I've spoken to other doctors where they also agree if you push through, it'll help. So I think it depends the person and the type of person you are. And for me, I'd rather it be more painful in the moment and then not last an entire day and like pushing through it naturally versus lying in a dark room. But going back on your question as well, I would say sleep was a big part as well. So I was always the type to procrastinate. I'll admit that. And it got to a point where if I was procrastinating and there was a task due tomorrow, a type of homework assignment, and I got a migraine, then there wasn't much I could do, because if it had been assigned for a week. And I learned that the hard way, because I did have a 3-page, 5-page paper due, and I had a migraine, so there was nothing I could do. And I felt so unproductive that I just had to lay in a bed and wait for it to be over. And that's when I realized I created a calendar. My mom also was very on me about that, saying I had to plan everything. Although her advice was obviously helpful, I think I learned from myself after putting myself in that position that something had to change. And I was also the type to always skip breakfast, because I would rather get 10 minutes of sleep than make breakfast. And that was, if I don't eat regularly, I'll also get a migraine. So I need to have like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Anytime I feel my blood sugar dropping, I could potentially get a migraine or pass out. So I would say just very fundamental I guess, lifestyle habits that a lot of people neglect. And I don't blame them, depending school, like if you have to study, all of that. So I didn't get that option anymore. I had to really crack down on the amount of time that I spent studying during like before midnight, ideally, so that I could get my 8 hours of sleep and stuff like that. And then eating healthier helped a lot, eating less greasy fast foods, which I've always liked to cook and stuff. So it sort of motivated me to get into cooking even more, which was cool. So I tried to make light of it, like you said, if I was ever stressed. And I think I tried turning it into, in my head, a good thing, because at a younger age, I was more independent. Like I said, I had people along the way helping me, but also if I were to get a migraine, at the end of the day, it was up to me how I was going to deal with it, how I was going to communicate it to everyone else, how I was going to treat it, because a lot of people around me didn't know how. So for that, I would say I'm grateful for it, because, yeah, I think I needed a little push to put everything together in life, but obviously not at that cost. But I think it helped me for the better. And I think I'm a more, not cautious person, or I'm always like prepared, I would say, not cautious. I'm always prepared for it to happen. And then that also applied to other things in life. And I would say that I'm just overall prepared and open-minded for things.
That is so inspiring and impressive. I can't even imagine having a migraine that bad. I think I would freak out. And then the fact that you're saying that you saw something good come out of it, I'm very impressed, seriously.
Well, that was the only option. I wasn't going to let it really get to me, because I'm grateful it happened at a young age, because I think if it happened to me now, then I would have had a very negative mindset on it and thinking, why is this happening to me? Why is this messing with my life? But luckily it happened when I feel like the stakes were lower. Like I wasn't in high school. I wasn't dealing with a lot of stressful changes in life. So I was able to come to terms with it and actually find solutions and ways to navigate it in a calmer time in my life, versus if it were to happen now or during college or during those more active years, it would have been a much more negative mindset. I can assure that.
Yeah, that's so wise though, seriously. And then you said that you stopped that seizure medicine and you're using just Advil and other types of maybe more common over-the-counter medicines. And then you also mentioned at one point that you now have something that you take, a nasal spray that helps you quickly. So what other medicines have you found along the way that you did end up, sticking with? Is that mainly the only other one?
I was just going to say, yeah, I've only ever done for migraines that the seizure medication, and then Advil and sumatriptan nasal spray is the nasal spray I use now. So I haven't used a seizure medicine since middle school. And then Advil, so I don't like to, technically you can't use the nasal spray more than 2 times a month, because it's a very strong spray, like says on the label. It can even affect your, like the nose senses themselves, because it's so strong. And I also don't like to use it. One, it tastes really bad. Like it like drips in the back of your throat for a very prolonged time. I mean, it's effective, of course. For the most part, it's not always 100% effective, but in most case scenarios it is. But I would say I try, if I feel a headache coming on, I'll try to use a lot of Advil, like 600 milligrams. Sometimes I've been doing 600 milligrams since I was in middle school. So I've always had like a higher dosage of that. But then for the nasal spray, since you can only use it twice a month, I try to only use it if I have the aura, because the aura indicates it'll be a full migraine. A headache just indicates that it'll be like a migraine in the works, and it hasn't hit that full migraine effect yet.
Got it.
But other than that, I haven't really, like I never really used Tylenol, I know there's this other medication.
Excedrin?
Maybe that's treated for migraine specifically.
I think
Is
it
that
has like caffeine in it, right?
Okay, yeah. That's another trigger. Thank you for reminding me. If I have like caffeine every day and then I stop for a day, I'll get a really bad headache that can turn into a migraine. So at the end of the day, like any headache, any weird things happening to my vision can turn into a migraine. So that's what sort of makes it difficult, because there could be no changes in the weather. There could be nothing else going wrong. I could eat all my food, have my regular amount of caffeine, and then I look at a light the wrong way and I'll get a migraine. So it's very sensitive. And for the longest time, I wore sunglasses, like inside, outside, just as a precaution, because I didn't want that to be the reason I got a migraine. It was in bed for the next 24 hours.
Wow.
And I still do wear sunglasses most times I'm out in the sun and all of that. But there's also sometimes you can't avoid it and you just have to, like for me, it's like mental as well. I try to almost tell my body not to have a migraine if I'm put in a situation that has very bright lights or very loud, something like that. I'm like, don't get a migraine, don't get a migraine. And I'd like to think it works, power of the mind.
Yeah.
Very few, like, I don't know, because I think it also helps to distract. Like if I'm in a position of getting a migraine and I think I'm going to get a migraine, I almost think that it attributes to the likelihood of me getting a migraine versus if I'm focusing on other things in my surroundings and such, I'm distracting my mind and therefore putting myself out of that situation.
Exactly. Maybe because it causes you some level of stress. If you're like, I'm going to get it, then you get stressed, and that might be another
and then you get
trigger.
Yeah. Oh, no, it is. Exactly. Well, that's also the unfortunate reality. If I have a test that I'm scared about, I used to get migraines like every time I was stressed about a test. And then there was a time that I actually did get a migraine, like during my high school test, like the ACT. I was so stressed that I got a really bad headache migraine in the middle of my test. And I was like, well, there's nothing much to do here. So that's also, I think I've gotten a lot better about managing my stress. And one of the ways I do that is through weightlifting. As I said, I've always been an athlete and I just love playing sports. So I train more athletically and like a hybrid powerlifting style. But that has also helped me with my stress and just also routine. Like I said earlier, getting the right amount of sleep, eating healthy, all of that. I feel like it all sort of blends together really nicely. So that has definitely helped manage my stress, of course.
Wow, yeah, definitely. I've heard that exercising and things like that can help to manage stress. Do you have any mental tricks or ways that you calm yourself down?
Like I said, or like you even said earlier, if I got stressed, I think it's just the reality of the situation, and there are things that I can't do to control it, so I can do as much in my power. But at the end of the day, if my body wants or decides it's getting a migraine, there's not much I can do. So I think accepting sort of my power in it all, like I sort of am powerless to migraines. So knowing that and that it's not my fault and all of that. But I would say also sort of tricking my mind as well into not being stressed. So I would say I'm somewhat of, like I said, I'm laid back and whatnot. So if there's something that's in dire need of happening and putting stress on my body, my mind, I sort of just like to think that it's not. I'm just like, okay, like in the grand scheme of things, this is one day in my entire life. Is this really, I try to like look at it from facts, not emotion. So I sort of try to like detach from the situation if I'm getting really stressed and then think about worst case scenario, best case scenario. And like I said, like distract my mind from the stress and then think, is stressing over this gonna long-term cause me migraines or cause lack of sleep? Because then if I'm stressing about something and I can't sleep, like a test, and I'm really anxious the day before, then I'll get a migraine. So it's like, I think learning, like you said, those tricks, those mind games almost I feel like psych myself out of it almost. And because of that, I think I'm sometimes I should put more pressure on myself because of that. Sometimes I take things too easy, but I think it's all about finding the balance.
That is so wise. I feel like the migraines have forced you to become wise ahead of your years. I mean, for our audience, she has just graduated from college and she's speaking like someone who's lived her whole life and learned all these life lessons along the way. So very impressive.
Thank you.
And I think, it goes to show that you were able to manage everything well enough to live a very quote unquote normal and successful life going through college. And I think that's really inspiring for other people, other young people who might be struggling with a condition like this is, you are able to manage it and get through it and go to college and do everything that anyone else would do.
Yeah, I think there's obviously, like I said, the reality of the situation. And there are times where I'll get nervous, or I just graduated from college. I had to drive my car down and it was a 13.5 hour drive. And there's always like a part of me in the back of my mind thinking, what if I wake up in the morning and get a migraine? Like there's always like, you can plan so much out, but you can never plan that out. So it's always, I can't lie, in the back of my head for anything serious. Or like when I was graduating, the ceremony itself, I didn't get a lot of sleep the night before. I had a really early, it was like 10 a.m. graduation, so I was up at 6 a.m. And then there were bright lights, loud noises, and I honestly did feel migraine-y. And I was texting my parents. I was like, no way this is happening, because it just feels like sometimes I can't have anything, like any big thing in my life. There's always the impending doom of a migraine. And I think for me, it was just, even if I were to get a migraine, luckily I didn't, I wasn't going to let it take over. And like I said, when I do get migraines, I typically push through. I don't like to take medicine. I rarely take the nasal spray. Sometimes I take the Advil, but I like to see how far I can push my body, almost to see if it's gonna fix, I guess, itself and go back to, I guess, like my normal routine and whatnot. But yeah, I will say in the back of my head, any important I guess thing I have looking forward to, or like travel days. Sometimes I get scared if I'm traveling by myself, what's going to happen if I can't see, like can't look in front of me. But I think the fact is it happened to me so much when I was younger, situations where it shouldn't have happened, that it helped me in the long run navigate my future and realize that even if it happened, I'm all right. Like I was all right. Everything will be all right. I've dealt with it long enough that I can always sort of use the rest of my energy, even if there's not enough of it, to figure out the rest of the plan. Even if it wasn't in the books for the day, I'll still figure it out. And then my schedule is always adjustable. Like I always think, like I said, like if something's stressing me out, if I miss a plane or if I miss a flight, there's always another one. If I miss an important thing, it's like when it's a medical condition, there's not much you can do about it. And I feel like that is the excuse. And I hate to use my medical condition as an excuse. And for the longest time, I never did. Like when I missed the due date, I really never wanted to blame it on something, because that just felt in my mind like an excuse. And I don't really like giving excuses. But then I realized that there's not much I can do about it. So I got a doctor's letter and all of that confirming it, because I never wanted someone to look at me as though I'm using my medical condition to get out of things that other people aren't. Like I know like a couple of things, like I got out of a lot of things in middle school when it was really bad. And a lot of people were like, oh, sort of jealous of me in a sense, or like, oh, you're getting out of this. Like I went to a Catholic middle school, and church was a really big trigger for me, just because the bright lights, you're standing for, I don't know, what is it, an hour, all of that. So I'm locking my knees. So I would get like migraine-y, pass out. Like I had a reoccurring instance of passing out every time I went into church. So then I got an excuse to either skip a church day or sit down during it. So then a lot of people would sort of look at me as though I'm lucky. And I feel like that was a difficult narrative, because that's obviously not the way that I saw it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want people to think that I was using it as an excuse to get out of what everyone else didn't want to do. So then like even sometimes I didn't bring it up, because I didn't want people to think I was getting quote unquote special treatment. So it was really hard to find that balance, because sometimes it is hard to ask for help in that situation, because I didn't want to be looked at differently. But I think I'd gone to middle school with them since preschool, like most of the same people. So I feel like they understood that wasn't the case. But then anytime I'm in a new environment, like when I went to high school and then when I went to college and I had to explain it, or like I was able to eat food during class. And I know because my migraines, if I don't eat, so I would bring snacks to class. And one of the rules was you can't eat in class. And then there I would be in the corner eating snacks, and everyone's hungry waiting for lunch. And everyone's so annoyed at me because I'm literally taunting them with my food. So I think it was like getting that special treatment, but it wasn't necessarily special looking back, because that was like no one else, I guess, required it. Like that was my level of normal. It wasn't exactly special treatment looking back, but in the moment I was, I guess, insecure about it.
Yeah. So many wise lessons in what you said about like just accepting when something happens, because if you think about it in life, anything you have planned could go wrong on the day of. But most people don't anticipate that there's a high probability of that. But for you, you know, there is a high probability.
I always have that feeling. Yep.
So it's like teaching you and preparing you for the reality of life, which is that nothing is actually planned and everything could go wrong at any moment. So in some ways, you have a wiser perspective than most, and dealing with other people's reactions and opinions of you and learning to not let that bother you. That's another really wise lesson.
Yeah. See, like I said, I'm just trying to turn everything into a positive outlook, just because, like you said, like I feel like I am very wise or I was very wise, I guess, wiser than other people my age because of that. And it forced me to look at it less as obviously a child, but I zoomed out of my life and looked at it more of like a full lifetime thing rather than just in the moment.
Yep. Now, back to the natural solution. So you said you don't like to take that much medicine at this time. Is there anything you do? Like, I know you said you kind of try to push through it. Is there anything else that you do or that you'd recommend people try if a migraine's coming on to try to like minimize those symptoms or the duration of it?
Yeah, one of the main things that I forgot to touch on is electronics. So like I said, lights can be a big trigger, and the light from electronics can also just as much. So I try to stay off my phone. I try to stay off my computer, anything. I'll wear sunglasses. These are actually prescription, but they also have blue light because I found that also helps just from tension headaches, looking at something too long. I also realized last summer when I was working a desk job that even posture can cause headaches. Like there's so many things that I feel like I don't want to say I think I know. I always feel like I know a lot when it comes to this condition because I've dealt with it for so long. And then something new will come my way. And then I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that could trigger it. Like I still technically don't know all of my triggers and I still don't know all of the remedies that will help. So it's a continuous learning process. But I feel like there's good in that because then that also shows that there might be another remedy out there that I haven't discovered yet that will help me. But as of now, it's definitely, I think for me, my aura is what I try to control the most. So that's just anything I'm seeing. So like sunglasses, technology. There's not much I can do about the numbness through my body that it's sort of just like, I just get pins and needles. So I just like whack it on stuff, like try to wake it up, even though that's not the actual reason for it going numb. But I'm just like, it'll come back. And then the headache itself, I would say I've done massages. So when I did see a neurologist, one of the things that I can't remember exactly how she did it, but you're supposed to rub like the beginning of your eyebrows and then drag it through to the bottom of your eyebrows. And then you're supposed to drag it all the way behind your ears. So like the lower back of your neck and then all the way around. And I actually do that very frequently anytime I find myself having a headache or possibly getting a migraine. But that's mostly because I can also get a migraine from like tension headaches. So it can morph from that. So that primarily only helps with tension. But my migraine the pain is usually carried right near my eyebrows. So I feel like that's my go-to massage. And that has helped me a fair amount just with, I guess also, like I said, with the peppermint, it distracts you. Like it's a different sensation on your skin that your body and your mind are reacting to and processing. So I think really it's just distracting your mind and body from the pain. Or like something, I'm not exactly sure if this is scientific, but like I said, with working out, I think a big part of working out and moving my body helps me is because it's distracting my body from like, if I'm working towards hypertrophy, so like until I can't do another set, my body is focusing all of that, not pain, but that stress on the muscle in that specific location. And I think it distracts from my headache. Now, that's not scientifically proven, but that's definitely something I've noticed as well. Like if I'm training upper body and the blood flow is going, like I'm just trying to make sure that I'm maxing out and creating stress in other parts and areas of my body to distract from my mind. And it has some benefit for sure. I'm not exactly sure if that's a real thing, but for me, that does help. But not pushing yourself too much because then that can also worsen the headache. So it's really finding that even ground.
Yeah. And with relation to diet, what, let's say, foods or drinks might help you if you feel like you're getting a migraine and what might make things worse?
Yeah. So I would say to help me, I like to have sugar, like high sugar. So whether that's apple juice, almost a go-go squeeze, I like to keep on hand. And because of this, I always do keep little fruit snacks, anything with quick sugar, Rice Krispie, go-go squeeze, as I mentioned, in my bag. No matter where I'm going, I'll always have food. I also like to have like a protein bar just in case because I never exactly know why I'll be getting my migraine. So maybe if it's because I'm hungry, I want something with more density to it than the sugar. But I would say those are my go-to. I know you're also supposed to have I don't really like soda. I never liked soda, so this is unfortunate, but Diet Coke or Coke specifically helps. Something about the caffeine mixed with the bubbles helps somehow. My neurologist told me, I don't know the exact science behind it, but Coke is actually one of the only sodas I do like, so that's fine. But that, and also you're supposed to increase your electrolytes, so Gatorade, anything electrolyte mix. So those have definitely, but I don't know if it matters, but for the order, I always like to have the soda first, and then I have the electrolytes after, like almost like my migraine was a lift, and then I'm like, okay, time to get my electrolytes in, and rehydrate to that degree. But it also affects the way that the Advil is processed in your system. So I also like to have that with fat. So whether that's like nuts or something of that source, because that just helps your body process and break down the medicine.
Right, right. And what about in, let's say, college, when you wanted to just eat pizza and have a beer and whatever else that you might want to just like live your normal life? Did that trigger your migraines, or were you able to kind of sometimes relax and, let's say, have caffeine or alcohol or pizza or something not so healthy?
Yeah, I would say as routine as I am as a person, I definitely I have a lot of balance in my life. So I don't eat healthy every day. I don't work out every day because I don't want to stick to that strict regimen. I also want to live my life. So there are plenty of days I had like the +7 for my school, which would mean I could have like flat out, which is pizza, adobo, which is the equivalent to Chipotle, all of that I would have most of the day. And for me, I think that never really affected my migraines. I think it was just if I was eating unhealthy breakfast, lunch, and dinner 4 times a week, something like that. But I always start my breakfast or start my morning with something healthy, like yogurt, oatmeal, something, eggs, sausage, anything of that. So I think it's just finding the balance. So I eat healthy for breakfast. I can have pizza for lunch or pizza for dinner, something like that. So long as I'm getting all of my meals in, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, I think it's, so long as I have like one healthy meal a day, I haven't really found too much. I think the main issue when I was younger is that I skipped breakfast. So that wasn't helping my blood sugar. And then when I did eat breakfast, it would be like a granola bar, so it wasn't something satiating. And I think after I started integrating like a full breakfast routine and then lunch and dinner, it was better. And then also with weightlifting and just my type of lifestyle, I almost like to eat healthier because it just makes my body feel better. And I think everything plays a part. So it wasn't even really difficult to encourage myself to eat healthy. Like, I feel like I always ate relatively healthy, but it was just sort of a wake-up call, and it made me realize that I shouldn't be eating as much greasy food as frequently. So I still have it probably once a day, but not 3 times a day.
I'm getting the gist that the theme is balance, right? Balance in so many aspects.
100%.
Yep, and that's key. That's key to many things in life, I think. So on to the optimistic outcome that you now have much reduced migraines, right? What percentage reduction would you say that your migraines are from when they were their worst in middle school, let's say?
Yeah, when they were their worst, I would say it's difficult. I started a tracking system for my migraines that my mom and neurologist actually had me keep so that I could monitor migraines. And then that's how I was able to draw out their symptoms and what their possible triggers were and all of that. So I would say I probably got them in 6th grade. I'd say for like maybe 3 out of the 12 months, maybe even more, because even when it wasn't during school, I remember I had a birthday party I had to miss. Like, it was like hanging out with friends I had to miss because I was all dressed up, ready to go, waiting by the door, and then it just hit me out of nowhere. So yeah, so I would say it's hard to, I would probably say it was a good 50 days, 6th grade. And now I would say,
Sorry, 50 days out of the whole year, you would have a migraine?
Yeah, out of the whole year.
Oh my God.
Not like,
that's a lot.
Yeah. I would say it was like really bad. And a part of me doesn't really, like I said, I wasn't tracking them or anything. So there's actually no real way of counting that. But from memory, I could be over exaggerating, but it felt like every day was a migraine my entire 6th year. Like, I feel like that it was really peak that year. And then when 7th grade and 8th grade, they started letting up, I was super grateful. And I go through, I guess, like I said, clusters where I'll get one, or like altitude as well, because I like to hike and outdoors. Sometimes that'll trigger a migraine. So I think it's, once again, going into the situation knowing there's a possibility of getting a migraine, and having that anticipation almost allows it to be less scary when it actually happens, because in your head you were already preparing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say this year I've probably had, okay, it's June. I've probably had 6, maybe. So there are other years, there was a long time in high school where I was only getting 2 a year. So yeah, there's a lot of variety in it, but they have started coming back. But it's also, like you said, I just moved from college, like barometric pressure, whenever I have changes in my life that disrupt my routine,
Yeah.
I get them more often. And then the impending doom of graduation for college, that caused me a lot of stress, that I got my clusters back. I was getting them in a row. So actually it might be more closer to 8 now that I think about it. But I just had to sort of take a step back and, like I said, remanage my stress,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously just sort of slow down too. Sometimes I'm moving too fast, because I almost want to like outrun the migraine, if that makes sense. Like when I can feel it coming on, I'm like, okay, I need to do XYZ really quick before I'm stuck in a bed all day. And I actually found out that I mean, you could assume that's worse for the
Yeah.
body, because then you're putting more pressure, more
Mhm.
stress, and it really speeds up the migraine, and it even worsens the degree of the migraine sometimes even. So I feel like that's been a big component for me as well, slowing down when I feel it happening rather than going faster. And I still have the want to go faster when I feel it coming on, because I'm like, oh no, but I have found I need to just slow down, and I try to stop what I'm doing and just like focus on my breathing and go off my phone and do all of that, and then take some Advil, do my massages, put my glasses on, and yeah, hope it goes away on its own.
Take care of yourself instead of rushing to get everything done. Another wise life lesson.
Exactly. But
Wow.
yeah, I feel like that's actually a really big takeaway that I only just started finding out recently. I'd say, like I said, like I'm still figuring out so many things along the way, even after having dealt with it for so long. And that's been my main, like with graduation creeping up, I was just trying to get so much done, like packing all of that I had to slow down. And for studying as well, like you can't cram the last minute.
Mhm.
And then if you cram and you get a migraine, what are you going to do?
Yep.
So it's like just taking every day at that, and not really, I feel like, well, because of that, I feel like I'm a chronic, like anytime I have plans with my friends, I'm chronically late because I've slowed down so much. I'm like, oh, I don't know if scared is the right word, but I don't like to push myself to the point that I get a migraine. And I still motivate and push myself, but it's just like more physically. I mean, like I'm not going to run around getting stuff done because I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, it's never worth getting a migraine over.
Right. Like if you're running late, instead of stressing out about it, you just take your time
Yeah.
and accept the fact that you're late.
And my friends know it, that they know they give me a fake time so that I show up on time. Like I know
Perfect.
that about myself, and it's something I've gotten better with. Like I said, balance, reoccurring theme, really echoing it, because then I was going too slow, and I was like, then I feel like I was losing my motivation, and that I was almost considering myself to be lazy. I was like, okay, like I don't need to be taking 3 hours at the gym to get a lift done, but I just didn't want to rush.
Mm-hmm.
So finding that middle ground and just, yeah, I guess moving with my body, not against it.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've gotten so in tune with your body and aware of, what that balance is when it comes to diet, when it comes to working out, when it comes to all of these factors, or dealing with stress. It really sounds like you've been forced to get to that level of balance and being in tune with your body that most people are still striving to get to. So
Yeah.
But sounds like that's a very important factor. So is it a correct statement to say that, let's say, when you were young, you had these severe migraines and they were probably triggered by your hormonal shifts at that age, and now they've somewhat died off, but lifestyle factors are still have a huge impact on whether they get worse or remain at a low?
Yeah, I would say 100%. That sums it up as much as I know, at least. Like I said, I'm still navigating my migraine. I'm still learning new things. I've been trying to educate myself more on them, actually. My grandpa will like find a migraine magazine, or like if he's at the store and he sees one, he sends it to me. Books, like my friends and family will send me books, anything to just learn more about it, which I think is really important because I didn't even realize like half the things that I sort of just tried not to think about migraines. Like I said, I was like, okay, they already take up so much of my mental space that I don't like to go and, if I had to read, pick up a book to think about them more. But also in the long run, it's helping me more to navigate. And like the whole reason for this podcast, like learn how other people might deal with it and learn any other hacks or, I don't know, mental mind tricks to help with that. So I would say, yeah, from where I am right now in life, that's a completely accurate statement.
Yeah, I'm so happy to hear that it is getting better for you. And also, it's interesting to know that it is very impacted by your diet and lifestyle, but maybe you're still working out what are the most important triggers or the most impactful things that are helpful.
Yeah, well, real quick, I would like to say it is still triggered by my hormones. So, like, around my period and
Oh,
stuff, I can also feel it coming on as well. Like,
makes sense.
I won't get a full blown migraine, but I'll get like a headache, or sometimes I don't get a headache and some limbs will just go numb. Like, sometimes it's not all like 5 symptom, it's just one of them
Hmm.
randomly. Or like my vision will get all weird, but I won't get a headache.
Hmm.
So that's really interesting that it's also like as I grow and as I've aged, that's different. It used to always be like, and I think part of it is due to the medicine that I started taking because it does try to stop it at whatever point that it was, or it could just be me growing.
Are there any resources that you've come across or some of the books that your family members have shared with you or anything like that that you would recommend to others as something that was impactful for you?
Yeah, there's a magazine. It's actually, I'm trying to think the name. It's somewhere in one of the bags that I have packed.
Yeah.
I was gonna go grab it. But it's like a blue cover and it just had the name, or it just had the word like migraines, like understanding migraines, something like that, very straight to the point. And it was, I think, 30 pages roughly just about the different types of migraines, how people treat it, whether it's genetic, why some people get it at a younger age and grow out of it, why some people just get it even if there's no family history. Like, it was very much pertaining to my situation, and I'm sure many others out there. So it was super cool to learn about that my grandpa bought for me. And then also I was grocery shopping in North Carolina where I go to school, and there was a very similar article that I also bought because now when I see it on the shelf, I'm more likely to, like I said, now I'm trying to learn more about it as opposed to before where I just wanted to not have any time to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think migraine in the title, I will just pick up.
Yeah.
And I feel like all of them are decently reputable sources. And if not, then.
And lastly, what would you say to someone else who's struggling with migraines? Maybe they're young or maybe they're older. What would be your insights or tips and tricks to kind of motivate them or inspire them to feel like they can get through it and they can move on with their life and not feel too burdened by it?
Yeah, I would say I don't want to be repetitive, but I probably will repeat a few things. Definitely, it's scary at first, not knowing. For me, like I said, I'm super grateful that they were able to diagnose it in the same visit. I think I would have been a lot more scared going on if the situation had been different and they weren't quite sure what was going wrong with me. And then after the MRI, CT, all of that cleared, I think since they had such a plan in mind and a plan set, like as soon as I had a migraine, we had the date set for when I'm getting an MRI, set for a CT. Like, there was always a plan. So I feel like there wasn't really much room to be anxious. But if that wasn't the case, just know that, I don't know, with any condition really, not even just migraines, that they're out of your control. And as much as you can change your diet, as much as you can start getting into the gym, sleeping more, trying to create less stress in your life, it's a part of your life. And everyone has something in their life that's going to make it difficult, whether it's a condition or not. And I think it's just, you're starting at a different playing field than others maybe, but at the same time, everyone has something going on in their life, whether or not you can see it. And I think it's, like I said, how I try to turn it into not a positive experience, but a positive outlook on my life. And it made me more wise at my age and more open-minded. And I also think that, like, since I was insecure about it in the beginning, now I'm more confident. Like, it helped me grow within myself as well, that this is a condition that I'm not really afraid to ask for help or afraid to ask for special treatment, because that's something that I require. And if I don't, then something worse could happen. I could, like, get a migraine, and then if I lose my sense of vision, like, something actually bad could happen. And when I came to that reality, because that's also another, I guess, like, fear in the back of my mind, if it always happens in a really uncomfortable situation or like the worst possible time it could, what could happen. But I think just knowing that you'll find what works for you and you'll get a handle on it as much as you can. And if you're not able to, the people you surround yourselves by, the community, will always be there to help you out. My sisters, I remember, were always there. They would get back from school, then practice, and my sisters would always make me dinner, actually. Like, they would be like, okay, like, whatever you want, I'm making you dinner. And then I couldn't watch a movie, so they would just, like, sit in my room and they'd watch a movie and I'd listen to the audio, because obviously they could watch it, but I was like, I can't look at anything electronic. So definitely just keep, like, the village around you is important. And then your mindset, I think your mind is so powerful. Like I said, how I almost try to psych myself out of it so many times, like, reframing the situation from being something bad to a learning experience, a growing experience, something that'll benefit you in the long run. Although it's uncomfortable now, finding the comfort in your discomfort and pushing it, like I pushed through migraines, pushing it to grow and seeing really what you're capable of. Because at the beginning, when I was just taking medicine, I was like, that's my only alternative. That's my only solution to it. But as I grew older and I realized I don't want migraines to control me, matter of fact, I want to control them and really just see how far I can push myself, obviously without pushing myself into a migraine. But if I already have one, seeing how far I can take it and how my body's going to respond. And every time it has responded positively. Every time, the more I push myself, the better my recovery gets and all of that. So don't be scared, I guess, to push yourself. Obviously not too much, but, like, you know your body. Like you said, you become very in tune with your body through this even more so. So just finding out what works for you, really.
So many inspiring things that you've said, and I've learned a ton. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing all of this. I am absolutely sure that it will help multiple people out there who are going through a situation where they're dealing with migraines.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for the great questions. This is so fun.
Amazing.